Why is Italian American history misunderstood, overlooked, neglected? Why don't Italian Americans know a lot about their experience?
The history department there was more or less like, we don't do Italian American stuff. So many Italianists kind of scoff at the ideal of including Italian Americans within Italian studies. If you want to do African American history, there's tons of places you could go to study that. It's important and we should study that. We
The
just failed as Italian Americans to develop.
Hi, I'm Danielle Romero. Thank you so much for being with me here on my channel where we talk about American identity and family stories. I'm so excited because ta-da! I have a podcasting microphone, and I want to thank all of my Patreon members and my channel members and everyone who has bought me a coffee through coffee. Thank you for fueling this channel. I just am doing this because I love it and I love learning here with you. So thank you for being here. And if you'd like to join Patreon and watch all of my content ad free, cut YouTube completely out, starting at $3 a month, you have access to the library. I'm constantly adding to it, and I have a Patreon members only chat going, and it's really a great way to connect. In this video, I'm going to do a part 2 with Stephen Cerulli, who's a PhD candidate, and he studies the Italian diaspora, which is essentially what happened after Italians left Italy, and a majority of Southern Italians were coming to the United States. Why is Italian American history misunderstood, overlooked, neglected? Why don't Italian Americans know a lot about their experience? There's a couple of reasons why, and one of them has nothing to do with Jersey Shore. I never watched Jersey Shore, but I knew all about it, and I want to tell you about an article. It came out in 2010, back when Jersey Shore was like still a thing for whoever it was a thing for. The Italian American group Unico had called for the cancellation of the show, and there was a concern about how it was portraying Italian Americans, and this was the tagline for this show. Jersey Shore is marketed as a peek into the lives of, quote, the hottest, tannest, craziest Guidos who keep their hair high, their muscles juiced, and their fists pumping all summer long, unquote. The Italian American group Unico was saying that no ethnic group should be treated this way. The use of Guido was a slur, and I plan on covering that a little bit in another video. The words Guido and Guinea, I heard a lot growing up, and I want to talk to you about some of the roots. A lot of Italian Americans, if you were interested in studying African American history, which you should, if you were interested in studying Mexican American history, which you should, for a lot of these groups, there are academic venues for folks to pursue that to the highest level of a PhD and then be able to disseminate that information to other people. But for some reason, there are zero options to pursue Italian American studies as a PhD here in the United States. I had Stephen Cerulli on here. He's a PhD candidate at Fordham University. We were talking about why Italian American history has been ignored in academic institutions here in the US. And he wrote an article for La Voce, and he goes on to say, as of 2024, there are 0 Italian American diaspora studies programs in doctoral granting institutions. Basically, places where you can get your PhD, there are 0 options to study the Italian American diaspora. Why is that?
My name is Steve Cerulli. I am a second year PhD student in the modern history track at Fordham University. I also work at Hostos Community College as a lecturer in American history and the John D. Calandra Italian American Institute, where I conduct research about Italian Americans. Essentially, I would say I am a historian of the Italian diaspora in North America. A couple of the people I knew growing up were in community college, so I figured let me hang out with my friends. However, I got stuck because I didn't take Spanish at the community college. I took Italian, and the UConn campus I was at in my hometown, Stanford, didn't have Italian. So I didn't get stuck for an extra year. I took a year off, and during that year off, I applied for this program actually hosted by the Calandra Institute, where I'm working right now. In this diaspora program, I was like, wow, there's actually a whole field dedicated to studying Italian Americans. Like, I want to do this.
Yeah.
So I applied to the grad center because it was, CUNY, Calandra's part of CUNY. At the grad center, though, I had some very nice faculty there to help me out. But the history department there was more or less like, we don't do Italian American stuff.
Hmm.
Um, so I couldn't continue after my master's, which I got in American Studies at the Graduate Center. And then I reached out to my advisor, Savannah Patriarca, who studies Italian identity in Italy. So she just wrote this book maybe 2, 3 years ago called Il Colore della Repubblica, or The Color of the Republic, which looks at mixed race children in Italy.
Ooh.
If you're interested, I can connect you with her.
Boy, that
Um,
sounds like right up my alley. That
yeah.
sounds great.
Um, so yeah, that's why I started following your page, because we're interested in some very similar questions. Maybe like a year or two ago, you did this thing on Italians and African Italians and race. But before I get caught up, so I wrote it to her, and she was like, "Definitely apply here. Like, I'm interested in these kind of questions that you're asking."
Hmm.
And then I found this home at Fordham University, which itself is
Awesome.
located in a little Italy, right above
Right.
Belmont, the Bronx. And I kind of stumbled my way up. That's the best way to describe it.
How could there not be like there's not an option to take Italian, or like there's not a lot of options to study Italian American history? It's so interesting to me because I feel like it's such a recent part of American history.
It's a
I am.
product of our own making.
Like, what do you mean by that?
Well, you'll go around the country and you'll find like chairs for Jewish studies, sponsored by Jewish organizations and
Hmm.
Jewish individuals. So, for instance, Fordham has a Jewish studies program, but not an Italian American studies chair and center. There are a few chairs in Italian/Italian American studies, but they're not in doctoral granting institutions, and that matters a lot.
Yes, it does. Yeah.
And the people who have the funds to do this have put their money. Though I'm not gonna, don't put your chair there. Put your chair wherever you
Right.
want, but
Right.
it's not going to facilitate future scholarship in the way that endowed chairs towards specific ethnic studies would
Mm.
in doctoral granting institutions. It has to be a
Yeah.
place
Right.
that future scholars who then go on and create their own students and of course their own literature. There needs to be a place for that to ferment. And
Mm.
unfortunately, in Italian American studies, so the people who hold the chairs right now across the country all do great stuff. They can't take on. There's one in Stony Brook, but it's in literature,
Mm.
but that they can't, especially in history, which is my particular concern.
Right.
They can't take on future students and develop them, who then can go to another university and then develop students of their
Right.
own. Um, so it's a big issue where you'll find like African American studies chairs in places like Harvard, Yale, etc., who are, especially Duke, right, who
Right.
then
Yeah.
train their own students,
Right.
right, who do, for instance, African American history and stuff. And these were fought for by like the NAACP, etc.
Hmm.
Right. This is
Right.
a failure on the national organizations within Italian America, who could then go out and do research, right, produce literature, and then bring in their own students and continue to develop the field that way. Um, so in the case of Italian American studies, if this was like 30 years ago, you're like, oh man, the future's looking bright. We have students right now coming up, da 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 da. But these days, I mean, I'm lucky. I'm studying under an Italianist. Yeah, so there's this whole kind of what's the word, like world of academia and how it's set up and how do you facilitate future studies on a particular topic that's not really well understood. And I would
Crazy.
argue that's also based in a larger kind of anti-intellectualism within the Italian American elite, where it's like, if you don't tell us what we want to hear, we're not interested in what you have to say.
So it's been a long time since I was in college, but when I initially went to a private school my first year of undergrad, I didn't like it. So I went back, I went to SUNY, State University of New York in Albany. There was like one or two Italian classes, no Italian American classes, and it was lumped in with like Hispanic studies. I ended up majoring in Russian literature and language and history. And like you could get
Mm.
real granular. The school I went to had to be 75% self-identified Italian Americans. I mean, it was in Albany, New York. And it's interesting to think that there's not really an avenue to even dip your toe into understanding your story at all.
So, for instance, for Russian, you can do Russian Slavic studies stuff at Columbia.
Mhm.
Um, you can do a PhD in Italian at Columbia, but not Italian studies. At none of the CUNY or SUNY schools, there isn't a Italian studies
No,
PhD,
no.
right? And you could do Italian diaspora through Italian studies, though many, not most, but though many Italianists kind of scoff at the ideal of including Italian Americans within Italian studies. Not all. So, for
Mhm.
instance, in Fordham, my colleague Alessia Villafredi, for example, integrates the diaspora into her, because at Fordham you can do Italian studies as a
Mhm.
minor, I mean, as
Mhm.
a undergrad
Yeah, yeah,
degree,
yeah.
integrates it, bachelor's undergrad, integrates that into her program. But a lot of places, and I was looking at, and part of this survey that I'm doing, right, it's is looking at, do these programs also offer diaspora studies?
Mm.
Some of them do, some of them don't. I haven't looked at it like in a month, so I can't tell you the exact details. But yeah, it's funny that you bring that up because I'm on the side between the thousands of other things I'm doing. I'm trying to develop an analysis of area studies. I finished a tri-state, and now I'm expanding out into New England, and I would like to eventually do the entire country.
I'm really frustrated hearing this. I think there's a lot of conversation, at least I've seen on my videos and stuff I've researched, of Italian Americans kind of grappling with what they don't know,
Yeah,
and how recent the immigration story really is for a lot of us. I mean, my dad's grandparents came like 1920s, not that long ago. I know more about my Creole side from the 1700s in Louisiana. There's no way to disseminate the information. There's no
yeah.
way to get people on track to do that and get people excited. I know for me in college, I took a lot of classes just to explore, to see, am I interested in this? And if you don't even have the option to do that,
If unless we don't go with the party line around things like Columbus, for example,
mm-hmm.
we're not really welcomed in a lot of the greater dialogues. Litmus tests, 100% Columbus, or we're not interested in working with you. And I'm being serious,
I
and
know,
it's
I know. I've seen, I think what's interesting is a lot of people who are very pro Columbus, they feel like that's our only figure. I'm like,
yeah,
he didn't even step foot into the
yeah.
areas that you're thinking he did. Like, it's just, it's not what you think it is.
Well,
You know,
back to Fred Gardefeu. He says they don't know what they don't know. Though I think that's the case for some. I would say others do know and they don't care. It's more so than the fact that he's Italian. It's the kind of narrative of we're the winners, and therefore we belong in this kind of
right.
project as winners too.
Especially looking at the Italian American experience. I think wanting to be on top, wanting to be a winner.
Yeah,
Like
not being seen as. And if you look at the early promoters of Columbus, it was educated people, it was bankers, doctors, and lawyers. Um, they're this group they're called the Prominenti. The kind of sash wearing endless dinner types that we see today have existed since the middle of the 19th century. And in order to kind of be viewed as fitting in with the rest of the American crowd, they kind of latched onto this symbol, and the kind of spiritual successes of them have continued. We're part of this American project. And I just want to note that the first Columbus Day was celebrated in the 1790s by Anglo Americans. So it was a figure that was already accepted within the American zeitgeist. So it was very easy for these types to latch onto for themselves to kind of fit in with the greater American Society of Hope. Because you go to some little village in southern Italy, even in the early 1900s, and you say Christopher Colombo, they're going to say, who? and it's reflected in things like monuments. There's zero monuments dedicated to Columbus south of Rome. Zero. Despite the fact that 51% of the Italians who came to America between 1880 and 1924 went back to Italy and were exposed to Columbian imagery.
I wish that I had had the opportunity to learn more about this. And obviously, you can teach yourself, and that's what I'm doing now. I'm learning now, but it would have been great to have had a guided
Uh,
thing like that as a college student, and because I think I definitely would have taken this track like
yeah.
100%.
There's people that are interested in 100%. I've had two or three people like, how do I do what you do? I'm like, you have to apply to a lot of programs and hope someone takes you in. I mean, I applied to 6 programs. I got into two. I applied to six though. Um, and it's you have to hope that someone is willing to take a shot because it's much less clear than, for instance, if you wanted to do something like early American history. There's a million
Right.
places you can study that, and I'm
Right.
not saying that's not important. Of course, that's
Right.
important.
Oh yeah. Oh, yeah.
But you have a lot of places. Even if you want to do African American history, there's tons of places you could go to study that. It's important, and we should study that. We
Yeah.
just failed as Italian Americans to develop, but we failed to kind of set our own narratives and put ourselves into those places as well. Universities are certainly hostile to African Americans too, and they have been able to find a place there.
I'm so glad to have you on and talk about this because I would love to change that. I would love to. Thank you so much for being here. I'd love to be connected with you. And if you're interested in any other work that I've done on the Italian American experience, I'll leave a list to it below. Stay tuned because I am thinking about publicly going through the Italian citizenship process on YouTube. It will be a long process. Right now, I'm vetting some agencies to partner with me. So let me know if you have any ideas on that. But I would love to just do that as a transparent kind of experience together. And if that works, maybe highlight other stories of you who may have gone or are going through the process of gaining dual citizenship in other places based on your ancestry. So let me know what you think about that, and we'll talk soon.